We have a really exciting panel of folks coming up. They're all innovators, all entrepreneurs. Some of them run venture funds. Some of them are entrepreneurs themselves. And I'm going to welcome them all to the stage. The panel is called the Community of Innovation. So if we could get Ryan Levy, Kevin Morris, Skyler Logsdon, and Elizabeth Reynolds to join the stage. Let's give them a warm round of applause. You all are entrepreneurs and innovators. Some of you have both been entrepreneurs and are now in charge of venture funds where you make investments in other firms. Elizabeth, Kevin, you both do that. So I thought we'd start, though, before we get into some specific questions, with really the intent of educating me and the audience on what's happening in business, what you're seeing in the venture space, what we need to be thinking about differently in government. Before we go there, why don't we just walk through, and I'm going to start with you, Ryan, on this one. Ryan his bio is amazing. It's in the packet that you have. He's the founder and CEO of a company called chargeFUZE. So what I'd like to do is just walk us through, your elevator pitch of sorts. How would you describe your company and what you're doing? And then we'll go to Kevin after that. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew. Good to be here, everyone. So my name's Ryan Levy. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of chargeFUZE. For anyone here who doesn't know who we are and what we do, we're a hyper-innovative company that's innovating the out-of-home mobile charging space, effectively enabling people to charge their devices without compromising their experience when they're out of home, whether that is in traditionally private sector areas or now moving slowly into the public sector. The way in which we do that is we allow people through one of our product offerings, which you could see behind me, we have a network of autonomous kiosks like the ones that are on the screen that are distributed assets across the country. By the end of April, we'll be live in 40 states. And the idea is that consumers, when they're constantly on the go, have the ability now, when they're in a compromised battery situation, by virtue of QR scanning on any of our assets that are fully autonomous, to open a rental on a portable phone charger, like I'm holding up here, that you can effectively take with you on the go. I think we're all very much dependent on our devices for different reasons, whether it's communication, work, food ordering, ride sharing, everything. Really, devices have become the remote control to our lives. And oftentimes we see a lag between innovation in the public sector that is oftentimes picked up, and it really starts, when applicable, in the private sector, where we've experienced tremendous growth over the last 9 to 12 months. Some of the big propositions that we bring to the public sector especially are that, of course, we're enhancing safety play for consumers, and we keep people out of home longer and dwelling without compromising their experience. But we also drive traffic and help support those local businesses by virtue of people being out of home longer than they would if they had to leave because they were in a compromised battery situation. And our assets for the public also offer revenue opportunities for those sectors and those municipalities who offer us, while also having language and signage opportunities for the city.
So, interesting term, compromised battery. I was telling Ryan last night I was at the Lakers game and I was down to like 3%. And I'm running out, Lakers lost unfortunately, but I'm running out to the parking lot to get to my car because I had left my car key in the car, but I knew that the app on my phone would open the door and get me into the car. Yeah. So I'm running through the parking lot, and my 18-year-old daughter, Bryn, is just shaking her head like, Dad is so ridiculous. And Ryan's like, well, I had a chargeFUZE station there, Drew. You could have used my product. Yeah. So, but yeah. I'm just here to give my daughter horrifying stories about me as I get older.
And then, I mean, Natalie, if you don't mind, we'll just thank you so much. So, some of our portfolio partners at the enterprise level who really want to remain at the forefront of all things innovation include some of the biggest retailers and venue managers in the country, with some big marquee venues like SoFi Stadium, like Crypto.com Arena, which to me as an Angelino will always be Staples Center. And so I think really what it comes down to is just creating an innovative utility. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're not the first people who have provided a power bank for people to use. but we're doing it in a way that, is very synergistic with consumer behavior when they're not in a compromised battery situation. And I think that ability to never miss a moment and constantly be on the go, in a world that's more tapped in than ever, is what's allowed us to experience, a high growth. And we know that there's, for a myriad of reasons previously mentioned, and a solution that fits with the public sector as well, that we're now starting to lean into and have been working on for the last 90 days.
Awesome. We're going to go to Kevin. That's great, Ryan. Thank you for that. Kevin, CFO of Wavemaker Lab. You've been an entrepreneur yourself. Tell us about Wavemaker Labs. What are you guys focused on?
Yeah, absolutely. So Wavemaker, historically, we have two legs to our business. One is we're a traditional venture fund where we make investments in early stage tech companies. We're actually an investor in relativity space. And so that's kind of what we've done historically. Over the last few years, we've launched what's called Wavemaker Labs, which is where I spend most of my time, and we're a corporate venture studio. So we partner with corporations and innovate for them. So think of us as the innovation arm of large corporations. Right now, we focus on ag and food tech. So our mission is to automate the entire food supply chain from seed to fork. A lot of the partners you see on the screen on that last slide are large QSRs and so on and so forth. One of our companies is called Miso Robotics. We've partnered with White Castle. We've partnered with Buffalo Wild Wings. We just announced a partnership with Chipotle. We actually don't flip burgers anymore, but flipping burgers looks cooler. But we actually automate the frying of things. So our Chipotle announcement, which went out on the wire last week, we're automating the chips. They fry those chips every day, and so we're partnering with them on that. Paistro, a fun business, a pizza vending machine. We've partnered with 800 Degrees Pizza, which is a Los Angeles-based pizza chain. They have locations all over the world. And Graze. Graze is a really fun one, and I think really would apply to a lot of folks in this room and to this region. It's a commercial autonomous lawnmower. Lawn mowing and bulk mowing is typically a loss leader for landscaping companies. And they make most of their money on the trimming of hedges and things like that. Rising labor costs, and already in an industry that has low margins, we're essentially allowing the landscapers to focus on the higher value things. This is a fully electric mower, and if you're familiar with the 2024 ban in California for gas-powered mowers, this is a great fit. We're actually starting pilot programs right now with customers. And so the theme here you can see is that we partner with corporations or municipalities almost from day one. Because we're investors historically, one of the biggest things is when you're making an investment decision is, am I betting on a company or am I investing in a company that's going to have product market fit? So we like to say at Wavemaker Labs, we don't write a single line of code until we have a corporate partner on board. So for Graze, for example, we secured $36 million of pre-orders from some of the largest landscaping companies in the US, and then we started to build the machine. And we innovate alongside the corporates. And that helps us, frankly, de-risk the investment thesis, but also, engineers. We employ about 100 engineers in the El Segundo area. Engineers know how to build great product, but we like to say they don't know how to build a hamburger chain. They don't know how to run a landscaping business. So we'll focus on what we're good at, which is innovation and robotics, and we partner with corporations and municipalities to really better understand the business side.
Outstanding. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that. Okay, Skyler Logsdon, founder and CEO of Boomerang. Explain your business. Fascinating concept, solving a big problem.
Am I on? Cool. Hey, everyone. I'm going to start with a small confession. I went to a Green Day concert this past weekend and was singing my ass off there. I haven't had my voice in like 3 days. I've had an email drafted to you, Drew, about not showing up, but I woke up.
I'm glad you're here.
So my responses will be short and sweet and probably a little bit quiet too because I don't want to cough in the mic. So I'm Skyler. I'm the CEO of Boomerang, and we're solving lost and found. I think everyone has that story where they're like, oh, I lost my blank at the airport, never saw it. Never saw it again. Stadium, the beach, the park. And so we want to become the Poshmark or OfferUp of lost and found, peer-to-peer marketplace. You find something in your neighborhood and you post it on Boomerang. I say, hey, I lost that item in the neighborhood. I post on Boomerang. Our technology does the matching, introduces you guys together. But to get started, we think businesses are a big part of the problem. Businesses don't have a process for lost and found. If you guys have went to LAX airport, or you guys have went to a metro company, or a stadium or a restaurant, they grab that item, they throw it in a drawer. You have to sit on hold with customer support, emails. It's broken. So we're going to spend the first couple of years focusing on helping businesses with their lost and found process. Then eventually we'll launch the peer-to-peer marketplace over the top of it. Thank you.
Love it. Thanks again for being here, Skyler. Okay, Elizabeth Reynolds, similar background and focus as Kevin's in terms of focusing on investments and innovating. Talk about Starburst for us, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Elizabeth Reynolds. I'm the program director for Starburst Aerospace, focusing on our accelerator programs that support entrepreneurs. Starburst was actually founded back in 2012. We started as an aerospace consulting firm in Paris, focusing on driving internal innovation efforts and helping the big global A&D primes understand what was happening on the ground level. We quickly saw the need to support entrepreneurs and be more deeply involved with this innovation and technology adoption cycle. We started our first accelerator back in 2015. That's a 12-month program where we focus heavily on bringing new technologies into the market. And that still exists today. We also have an additional 7 accelerators currently operating globally. And each program is a little bit different. We work with corporate and government partners on these programs, working with entrepreneurs from researchers at academic institutes through Series A and beyond for some of our programs that are more open innovation focused, where we're solving specific problem sets for our corporate partners. And yeah, we're continuing to grow rapidly. Aerospace is absolutely booming. And when I say aerospace, I want to highlight how broad that is, because historically that's been a really insular industry, and I think people have a really limited idea of what aerospace is. But it is everything: space, aviation, defense, and all the enabling technologies. So when I say aerospace, I'm talking about AI, ML, digital twins, future modes of transportation, new rocket engines, all of these components, as well as things that facilitate our ability to travel and live in space. So we're actually moving into biomed focus with our first health and space program that we'll announce formally next month. And we're just looking to support entrepreneurs who are tackling some of these big problems that we see today.
Yeah, and similar to Kevin, if I understand Starburst correctly, you're focused on innovating for large corporate entities in a lot of cases as well, outsourced R&D, and just, I remember being at the Space Systems Command and hearing the former general talk about, General John Thompson talk about SMC 2.0 and how they realized they weren't innovating quickly enough and they had to rely on private industry partnerships to be able to do so. And I hear, Kevin, it's fascinating to me to hear that you had $28 million in orders as a way of validating that there's a need, and you hadn't even built the product yet. So I love hearing that. And at some point during this topic, I'd love to hear from all of you about how maybe we can outsource some of that innovation with public sector as well. And we're going to talk, when we get to the aerospace panel, there's some really cool things happening in the convergence of public and private. Before we go there, let's talk about the region. You all live in Southern California most of the time. I'm looking at the end there. And tell us about the talent pool here and why you chose the region. And just as a quick segue, when we were doing our speaker prep call, I remember hearing from Will Varda. Will's going to be up later after lunch. You won't want to miss it. It's called Varda Space Industries. They're building manufacturing in space. So they're going to be manufacturing in space in a zero-gravity environment. And big idea, I said, Will, how did you land on El Segundo? He said it was simple. Well, simple for him. I built an algorithm to scrape LinkedIn to find where the density of highly trained engineers and PhDs are, and it was San Jose or El Segundo. Hence, we relocated, or we moved from the East Coast to El Segundo. So I imagine talent pool and intellectual capital plays a big part in your decisions. But let's talk about the region. How is the talent pool here? Generally speaking, why did you choose the region? What's working? And then later on, we can get into what can we do differently in government to help. But let's start with, I guess I'll start with you, Kevin. You're right to my right. What's the region like? Why did you locate here? And what's the talent pool like for you?
Yeah, 3 words: location, location, location. We were originally in Santa Monica before COVID, much smaller team. a lot less engineers, and over COVID, our business has done quite well over the pandemic because of the labor issue. And as we expanded the talent pool, we found quite a bit of engineering talent that either worked at companies in the region or lived in the region, especially South Bay, Inglewood, El Segundo area. And so it seemed like a natural fit for us because, again, we have a lot of engineering talent. Engineers are hard to hire. It's a very competitive job market, and being close to a strong pool was extremely helpful. But in addition, we have a lot of people who come in from Orange County. We have a lot of people who come in from West LA, even kind of the Valley Encino area. And so it also made sense, to be what I would call in kind of the middle. And also, again, being close to LAX is crucial for us. We have a lot of people coming to visit, and we also have a lot of travel that we have to do.
Thanks, Kevin. Ryan, same question for you.
I think post-COVID especially, it's very difficult but easy at the same time to find talent, and difficult in the sense that the talent you may need or you may want may not be local. And there's a bit of an expectation now with remote working and working from home that you can have somebody who's a huge asset to your company that may or may not live in the city where your headquarter office is. And they may come out monthly or quarterly, but they're working from home from Chicago or New York, right? I think for us, as Kevin mentioned, it really is location-based. There is just by virtue of the size of this city, from an odds and probability standpoint, you'll be able to have a more siloed focus on finding talent in a city that has more people here. A lot of big tech over the last 5 to 10 years as well has migrated south from the Bay, and really over the last 2 years because of COVID. And so we're picking up on that, the coattail of that migration. I think now we're starting to see some talent also leave California, but that's where you can find the right, we have such a great team. We've had people who have moved here from across the country to join our team, but I think that's part of what this city both have to offer. And at the end of the day, you have to play to your strengths, and for somebody to not sell the vision of, sure, the company is one thing, but the culture associated with it and the place in which it's based is a work-life balance is very important. And I think people being able to come and have that in a state and a city like this can't be slept on when it comes to people effectively having the ability to choose their employer from wherever they want to work. So with post-COVID, there are a whole new set of challenges, I think, with hiring. Some favorable and some that you have to work around, but there's a lot of talent, especially here in between El Segundo and I'd say like central Los Angeles up until the coast. It's just there's a lot of talent, a lot of big tech, and a lot of people are always looking for the next big thing, and so you're able to lean into that. And we've had great fortune of having a great team to help build what we're building.
Awesome, thanks, Ryan. Elizabeth, I remember when Starburst, thanks to Ben Marcus over there, was kicking around the ideas of LA County. You had a ton of success in Paris with your model, and you were looking at LA County. So it's kind of a two-part question. Why LA County, and then how did you land in the South Bay specifically? Similar, and what's special about this region?
Well, certainly Los Angeles has a rich heritage in aerospace. We've long, the Southern California region has long been known as the global aerospace capital, and we're really passionate about continuing that status, and we really want to be the hub of this new space era. When you look at entrepreneurship in general, there's a lot of verbiage put to the ecosystem, and it is really, really critical. The reason that startup entrepreneurs are able to do so much with such small teams is because they rely on a huge support network. And LA is really, Southern California in general is really uniquely situated to support that. As has been mentioned a couple times, the density of engineering talent here is really high. Our universities produce more engineering graduates than any other major metropolitan area. There are also all the research that comes out of those labs, government labs, the base here, as well as corporate industry. We are really looking for places that have that intersection between between the legacy industry and this entrepreneurial environment, because we need those partnerships to bring technology actually out into the market. So we've been really blessed to have a lot of support from El Segundo, and obviously, again, there's a rich history there. All of the big corporates have a presence there. You know, we can't complain about the weather here in Southern California. It's a nice place to be, and it does make it easier to attract talent. That said, I do think that there's work to be done. Everybody I speak to is concerned about the talent shortage, especially when we're talking about hardware engineering. And it's expensive to start your career in California. It's expensive to start a business in California. And I really look forward to more public-private partnerships and opportunities to really support people who are building things in this region.
Great, thank you very much, Elizabeth. Skyler, same question. What's unique about the region? Why did you locate Boomerang here?
It's a great question. I know from my last company we had 4 offices: San Francisco, LA, Toronto, New York. And LA wasn't our first office, but it quickly became 4 times larger than any other office. And for me, it was obvious. I'm from Ojai, which is a suburb from here. It was the work-life balance. There's things to do in LA before and after. Yes, we work very hard, but can we play volleyball at 7 a.m.? Can we go play basketball after work? Like, the team would go and we'd play 5-on-5. There's things to do all year round. And I think during COVID and coming out of it now, we haven't brought that stuff back yet for people. That's the community that we need. And I think whatever city brings that community back for the talent of, like, there's things to do after work. People that are dating, they don't want to be on the dating apps. They want to meet someone at a volleyball group. They want to meet someone at a pickup basketball game or a soccer group. We need to bring that stuff back for there to be things to do after work. And yeah, for this new company, I haven't figured it out yet. Engineers, talent, it's so different right now. People don't want to come in. You can offer the meal, it doesn't work anymore. The old tricks don't work. And so you're like in stride trying to figure it out. How do you get these people to come into the office, to get to know each other, to play basketball with each other? I haven't figured it out. I don't think I'm alone. I think we're all trying to figure out what does it take to get everyone back in. Because if we can get people back in, then we can justify the office. But if you have the office but nobody wants to come in, it's a sunk loss. So I think the rest of the year, it's going to take shape. I think we're going to start to see more of it. But as of right now, it's TBD.
Yeah, that's a great point. I wanted to touch on this, so thank you for bringing it up. I'm hearing a theme emerge here. I was talking to a couple entrepreneur friends of mine, one CEO of a large company here in LA, based in the esports arena, and he's like, we're absolutely bringing our people. We're going to require people to be in 3 days a week. Monday and Friday will be their flex day. They can do what they want. And then I hear from another person in the digital agency space, we got to compete with Google, and we're letting everyone continue to work wherever they want remotely. What is your take? I mean, I heard you say it specifically, Skyler, about the challenge of bringing people into the office, incentive versus requirement. As a government person, I think a lot about, okay, I think in El Segundo, our second or third most important revenue stream is business license tax, which for our city is a function of square footage and head count. So if people aren't signing the same size leases in Class A office, and the inventory is maybe not what people want anymore because it's mid-rise, it's older style, it's not open space, Class A creative, what is that going to do to our head count, square footage, and ultimately our business license tax? So I'd love to hear you, all 4 of you, talk about what you see happening, what you predict in the future, and what you're working on in your company to either require or get people to come back and or not. So we'll start with Kevin and same thing.
Well, luckily, our products are big, and they require a lot of mechanical work. So Gray's, for example, is a 6-foot mower. So that helps when you have engineers having to physically work on things. But yeah, I think it's a great point. And half of our company is software engineers and folks who don't work on hardware. And to start, we obviously encourage them to come in. We frankly have to Skyler's point, entice them. A free lunch here or there, happy hour. But those aren't on the same day. We split them up. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, trying to build the best looking office as possible. You want to be mindful with resources, but making it fun, I think, is really important. But I do think that a lot of these large tech companies can say, hey, work remotely as long as you want. But I think, in my mind, being the most productive is being around your colleagues physically for, it doesn't have to be the whole week. I think it could be, flex, or allowing people to say, hey, we'd like you to come in for the team meetings, but with LA's traffic, it's not good. Being able to say, hey, you can come in, flex on one day, so it's come in by 10, you can leave by 4, right? Versus having to require 9 to 6 or whatever. But yeah, it's difficult, and we've been spoiled a bit over the last 2 years, being able to not require folks to come in.
Yeah, so real quick touch on that. I think you're unique, and possibly Elizabeth too, in terms of your investments with your firm, where the maker space is one of the exceptions, it sounds like, where people want their engineers on site. Think about the SpaceX's, ABL Space Systems, Relativity. They're actually making things, and it's much more critical for them to be on site. And it's important for us to know in government what industries, how it's going to affect industry differently. Yeah, Ryan.
I'm a firm believer in human-to-human interaction. I just, like Kevin said, I think problem solving and ideating and creating in person and in war room sessions and just around people, there's an intangible energy and excitement associated with doing that, whether, like I said, you're ideating and creating or you're problem solving. It's like doing things together as a team and not super siloed. I think you get the best out of people. But now there's a paradigm shift where we also have to be cognizant of this this post-COVID world. As bizarre as that is to say, it's a reality. And so having expectations that people come into the office 4 days a week, and understanding that people are still accountable for their work when they're not coming in and still contributing and still being productive. At the end of the day, I think a lot of that has to do with the incentives also, like Kevin mentioned, happy hours and, team lunches also on separate days, and making sure that you have a light, bright, and welcoming work environment, literally, but also figuratively speaking. And just, look, no one wants to be the black sheep. I think if you create a culture that welcomes people and gets people out of the house in the morning and leaving in the evening and working hard but having fun while they're doing it, people will gravitate towards the office. And so it's a learning curve, and I think there is a learning curve to it, and there are key learnings now, especially in this post-COVID world, that we're trying to learn from, refine, optimize, and implement into going forward. But I think at the end of the day, it's a myriad of things that go into creating a work environment that makes people want to come and not feel like they have to come. Because I think people more than ever now are willing to. There's a lot of great high-paying jobs out there. I think people want to find something that they enjoy doing and have fun doing more than ever. And people are willing to do something and then change careers after 2 or 3 years if they're not happy. People really prioritize their happiness in conjunction with the work environment. Where I think traditionally and historically, what I've learned is that it's a career, and your career is your career, and you're in it for the long haul from the time you start. People are now shifting and moving around and oftentimes taking pay cuts or salary cuts because there are certain benefits that they can get that are intangible to working in other jobs that previously weren't, satisfying them across the board. And so I think at the end of the day, if you incentivize people and create an environment that, makes people want to come in, even the people who were really, work from home oriented and siloed in that sense will eventually come around, and they're like, well, I don't want to be the only one who's not in the office. And you want people to want it, and I think if you create that environment, it naturally will happen.
Thank you. And then Elizabeth, for your portfolio, the investments that your company makes, what are you seeing, generally speaking? What's the trend out there in terms of allowing people to work from home or not?
So, the future of work is hybrid. We're never, and I am much more proponent of that than some people. I've been in this space for a while. I actually started my startup world ventures, heading ops for a co-working space. I think in a lot of ways the desire to have people in the office 5 days a week is really antiquated and really calls back to an industrial era where you want to see that people are working. And the line between personal life and work has been blurring to the point that it doesn't exist for many, many, many years. I am not the only person in this room who checks email at like 10 p.m. or like first thing in the morning when you wake up. Like all of us do. And so creating a flexibility that also allows your personal life to coexist with work is really important. And if we want to continue to win talent, that is one of the key pieces because people want that. And everybody works differently. There are different types of work that are done, creative work, physical work, building things. When many of our companies are building hardware. And yes, you need to physically be present for that. But if you spend, most of your day doing business development, on calls and meetings, out with other things, doing more independent contribution, your work style, your personal preference may be to do more of that work at home. And as long as that work is being done, I fully support people doing whatever they need to do. And we certainly see that with our portfolio companies as well. And I think it's even more critical in early stage startups because, again, office space is a premium. But I'm really looking forward to this time where we can kind of reimagine what work looks like and in the public space as well. I think co-working is going to rebound well during this time, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to create these spaces for collaboration and work and meeting that is outside of your own physical office. And I think that that's the direction that we're moving.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. Skyler, how about you? What are you seeing with your firm and some of the other companies you've been involved with as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's not fair in many ways that startups that have 2 million, 3 million in the bank are competing with Google and Facebook. We are so connected to them. If they offer gym memberships, puts pressure on us. They give all engineers 15% raises. Next thing you know, our engineers are asking for 15% raises. So you have to, from my experience, find people that have worked there and hated it. Because then they stop comparing you with them. If they're addicted to startups like I am, I never have to fight that battle of like, you don't want to go there. Like your boss won't know where you're at. You could work 2 hours a day, but that doesn't feel good after a while. Eventually you want impact. You want to go down for something of like, oh, I worked on this startup and it got acquired by that company, and that feels good to tell that story. Not like, oh, I worked on this tiny piece of the product at this very large company and you never felt the impact of your work. So I've find people that actually don't like that other side, and they know it's not for them. Because if they know that, then you don't have to keep answering every quarter when Facebook announces they're bringing back laundry again. And they're like, are you guys going to do my laundry? I know it sounds crazy, but like, this is real. This is really what we deal with in the fight for talent. So yeah, think of like creative ways of like, how can Google not compete? We have a thing called story time, where someone chooses a topic of a story of like, hey, tell me about one person that changed your life. Very intimate moment. It's 9 people sitting on a Zoom conference. And like the things that people share in those Zoom meetings, you wouldn't share that if there was 15,000 people on the Zoom conference. But if it's 9 people that you see every single day and you work together, this story time I actually think is a great way to build culture, intimate culture, because your teammates actually know you. So I always try to think, what can we do that Google can't? Can we golf and have like groups of 3 against each other? Could we, I'm always just trying to think, what can they not do? Use your size to your advantage, or lack of size to your advantage, and find ways that they can't make moves like you.
Yeah, please do.
I want to build on what you're saying and highlight that it really is about the mission. It is about finding people who are passionate about what you're doing, and this is something that we coach entrepreneurs a lot about, how to communicate what they're doing and what that mission is externally, but it is just as important, if not more so, internally. People want to do something that has an impact, and so emphasizing that why piece is, I think, much more important than how much money you pay somebody or what those perks are. There aren't actually a lot of people who are particularly motivated by money.
I have a thought as well. I think oftentimes within these big companies, Meta and Google, for example, Amazon, really talented people, let's take a full stack engineer, for example, their talent and the ammunition they have as an employee oftentimes falls on deaf ears. They're siloed into and pigeonholed into constantly tweaking the search bar on Facebook. Meanwhile, they want to be creating and seeing the fruits of their labor. And so I think, these big companies lock out and just hire, sometimes to hire. And what ends up happening is, like Skyler said, the smaller guys like us who are, 14 employees, we're able to sell people on the mission and the vision and also the work-life balance and being a part of something where they're able to see their contributions actually materialize on a daily basis, rather than being a small clog in a big wheel, right? And I think that's valuable, and you honestly can't put a price on somebody bringing to market and seeing people interface with something that they've built. It's really the coolest feeling in the world. And I think having a collaborative effort in that sense, people do their own things, whether you're an engineer or you're a product guy or you're somebody in business development or partnerships, being able to see the fruits of your labor, which oftentimes doesn't happen in really big companies, is more rewarding, I think, than money can be, and is. And that stuff will follow, right? But it's about creating, and I think that's a benefit that we have, as in the startup space.
It's interesting. I was thinking too about some of the comments you all made about how people move around a lot in their jobs. I mean, my son just got on with Deloitte as an internal audit after getting his master's in accounting and CPA, and 9 months later he's like running to a startup, one based here in LA called Flowcast. And when I think about the South Bay, I think about the convergence of all these industries. So El Segundo, Torrance have been major hubs for aerospace, Redondo, for many years. And now you have companies like Beyond Meat, by the way, little plug, Darius, the Chief Innovation Officer, will be here after lunch. You want to stick around for that? You may or may not win a trip on a rocket ship if you stay till the end. But you think about these industries that are converging: food production, emerging tech, deep tech, aerospace. Can we, really quickly maybe, because I want to get to one more question, talk about how, if you have an example, how you're seeing that play out in your space? Are you seeing folks that have been traditionally aerospace jump to something because they're like, I want to do something different, I want to make something in this space? Or maybe you can, if you have a thought there.
I'll start. I think I look for talent that has a chip on their shoulder, something to prove, and I actually like when they do a rebrand. I like when they're leaving an industry and they're like, hey, I just want to break into this thing. I notice that you get more out of that talent when they have something to prove. Or they're like, look, I really wanted to break into product. I was an engineer. And they work very hard and they do their homework. They're watching YouTube videos, master classes, trying to figure out how to be the best product manager that they can be, because they feel like they're behind. They're lacking and they want to catch up. But then they catch up, they don't even know it. Then they're just passing other product managers because they're still being a student of how to be a product leader. So I look for that, those career changes. I look for someone wanting the complete opposite.
You would never look at that as a negative. You actually look at that as a big positive. They've got experience from a different industry. And okay, thanks.
And you can do it quickly now with like General Assembly. They went to a boot camp and they did a 1-year program. Then they come out full stack. So there's many ways to do it. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Elizabeth, you had a thought, and then we'll go to Kevin.
Yeah. I mean, I am really excited by a lot of the kind of cross-disciplinary efforts that we're seeing. Again, when you look at enabling technologies, it's the same things that are driving innovation across a lot of different industries. And especially when thinking about these systemic global problems that we're trying to solve, collaboration across different industries is really key. And I think that we're going to continue to lean into a lot of development with that. And, again, working with companies who have aerospace application, most of those companies, if not all of them, have application in other industries as well. And it just helps speed the development. It gives you multiple commercial markets and gives you a much wider pool of expertise to pull from. And again, we're looking for we're looking for new and innovative ideas, and nothing helps bring those than having an outside perspective. So as we talk about diversity on our teams, having a diversity of background is also something that we really look for.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I think we continue, we talked about this on the last question, but we continue to struggle with recruiting, bringing engineers on, and retention, because again, it's tough to compete with someone doing your laundry every day, or publicly traded stock as compensation. So I think well, so two of the things that we do at Wavemaker, one is not unique, but is one I think is the first one is when you're trying to attract talent or keep talent, is to say, hey, like Ryan's example, if you work at a Facebook, you're going to have a big impact on a really, really, really small thing, which is, I think the search bar example you gave. But come join an earlier company, and basically, you have to treat your employees like co-founders. They're actually having a say in how the business, setting the tone and the stage for the business early on. And I think that's a huge thing that it's really important. Not just for engineers. Engineering is hard to hire for, but your whole workforce. The other thing that we do that's unique at Wavemaker Labs is all of our portfolio companies that I walked you through, and we have about 10. We only showed you a few. None of them actually, and over time they will, none of them have like a large W-2 workforce. Everyone at there's 100 or so folks, they all work for Wavemaker Labs, and think of Wavemaker Labs as also an internal consulting organization. So we may have an engineer work on Grays for 6 months and then on Pystro for 6 months. So you have this ability to kind of rotate through projects, which is also fun. But our equity incentive plan, which is, this was the point I was getting to, is our equity incentive plan actually is a diverse incentive plan where we actually, you hold stock in all of the portfolio companies, which is unique. So not only, you're not getting stock in just one portfolio company, aka potentially if you work for just a normal startup, you're actually getting a little bit of a lot of companies, which is something that we've tried to be unique on. And I think that helps us attract better talent because, with any startup, if you have stock options, they could pay off or the company could fail. I mean, that's just the nature of business. But for us, we've essentially, again, you're getting a little bit of a lot, and that's something that we've set up purposely to try and really attract and retain the best talent.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. I'm going to go to the last question before we open up to the audience, which is, how can we help? Again, Ben over here asked me the other day, I know there's a mayor on the East Coast that's doing a good job, to be unnamed, courting entrepreneurs and businesses out of California and Texas and other places. And part of the premise, I believe, is just how can we help? So I want to leave this audience thinking about how can we in government help foster innovation, entrepreneurship, and ultimately economic development to benefit our cities. And then we'll open up for questions. So that'll be the last question for this group before we go to the public. So whoever would like to start. Actually, Ryan, we'll go to you because you didn't get to answer the last one. Please.
I think oftentimes small businesses and startups, traditionally speaking, don't have resources that they can lean on when it comes to, they're not incentivized, for example, to make a selection in terms of where they're forming their headquarters and where they're building their team and where they're going to build a business from. And I think certain cities now that are innovative and forward-thinking across the country are starting to actually put a very loud voice, outward speaking, into attracting talent and business to come to their municipalities, to come to their cities, to parlay everything that city may or may not have to offer in this situation, may have to offer, but in conjunction with incentives to get people to bring their business there. And I think something that being in the public sector, something that I really do believe, these are the creators for tomorrow. Everybody who's building, anybody who creates and innovates and ideates and builds something big, they start somewhere. And so in a very calculated way, I think municipalities can offer resources for early stage companies and maybe even incentives to attract talent to their market. And not something that I've experienced living, for the most part of my life in Southern California, and a lot of it is just, and I'm sure Skyler will attest to this, like a lot of it is, kind of just figuring it out on our own and not having any resources. I mean, a lot of the times when startups have a robust cap table and, they're able to help you, your investors are, and that's why you bring on strategics. But I think from the top down, really at the municipality level and in the public sector, having, resources to help search and create hubs of talent at the small, for startups in your cities and incentivize them to come will really go a long way, and I think will impact the city beyond just like, the startup space. I think long term, it'll have implications of driving people and becoming a destination, attracting talent. There are non-intrinsic ways to quantify that beyond just like, it's not turnkey anymore. Where like, okay, if somebody leaves an office space, we'll find somebody else to fix it. It's like, you want to create an affinity towards your market for people and creators all over the place to want to come to your area, because the implications that will have beyond just, the binary, black and white office space, I think is what, I'm saying is not, you can't necessarily quantify that. And now's the time that, I think, people like the amazing folks in this room can slowly start to ideate about like, how do we incentivize people in small business and really great, entrepreneurs to select us? Like, what can we do from a resource standpoint? And then maybe even, is there a way to help incentivize, businesses as well?
Great, thank you, Ryan. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I mean, this is certainly why, as I mentioned earlier, I think public-private partnerships are really powerful. Certainly with accelerators, it's really nice to have that alignment. Public entities are really uniquely placed to tackle long-term problems, to look at things that have a solution not 5 years down the line, but 20, 30 years down the line. And being able to bring mission alignment and resource to that is really powerful. As well, working with earlier stage companies who are doing more complex problems and often working on things like, urban mobility and, smart city applications. Again, this transition from lab to market is a sticking point, and public spaces are really well situated to help provide those pilots and betas that these companies need to prove that their technology works, to bring the commercial growth, to bring the investment that they need to expand this access to this technology. And so again, this also just fits with this cross-collaboration piece and this building of innovation hubs. Nobody has to do this by themselves. The future really is collaborative and global, and we need to be working together to build the right environments that work for everybody.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, love that. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think just to echo what Elizabeth said, it's for a lot of our companies, it's getting past that ideation stage and into the alpha, the beta prototype. And so everyone in this room, you guys are influencers in one way, shape, or form, and have tons of connections. And, it's all about who you know in business. And, for example, if Ryan wanted to get into, I didn't see your full slide, but into Dignity Health Sports Park, I'm pretty sure someone in this room has that introduction, right? For example, and you may actually be there. Are you there yet?
It's the only venue in Southern California that we're not in.
Look at that, see?
But we do have a partnership with Dignity Health Hospitals for their emergency rooms, so, there's some alignment there.
Anyways, yeah, so, I think that's a good point, is that, and this is a unique set of cities. It's not just one city. There's a lot of diversity. If you look at the map, it's pretty impressive. So I think things like that, again, it's all about who you know. And, just making the connections. And, hey, I know someone here. You don't have to promise anything, but I think that's something that we struggle as emerging companies is execution and getting to that next stage where we can pilot something out or whether it's with a company or a city.
Thanks. Skyler?
Yep, I'll add to that. I think every city needs a VP or head of innovation that knows every founder in the city and says, you tell me what you're working on, and if it makes sense, I'll take your hand and make sure you don't get stuck. I can tell you there's a lot of things that just get stuck. You're like, that call was amazing. Like, they're like, yes, we would love to outsource lost and found you at LAX. You meet in person too, then it gets stuck. I can save your taxpayers dollars so you are not dealing with lost and found at an airport. It's stuck. Metro stuck. Library stuck. Why is everything stuck? We need that advocate. I can only follow up on so many follow-ups until you're really just talking to yourself. And it's there. But then you touch another city who's got that VP of innovation. You're like, oh my gosh, look at how quickly we are. We're there. Wow. Those hurdles were just not necessary. So I want to see LA be that city. I ran a company here for 6 years. I'd never had anyone reach out to me saying, hey, I am the VP of innovation here. I see you guys are employing a ton of people here in Santa Monica. It would be great to meet you. I want to meet that person. So I would love to see that. I think that's a massive opportunity. And Drew, putting on this event, he's bridging the gap. And I think there's so much fun stuff we can do with each other that will drive employment here. That will get people to come to the office. Will get me getting bigger office spaces here if we can close those deals.
Well said. Thank you, Skyler. Okay, do we have any questions from the audience? Don't be bashful. There's a mic. There's 2 mics right here. Yeah. Lady in the red, please. Thank you.
Hi, Sharon Landers. I have been so interested in the conversation. And Mayor, I'm going to throw this back to you. One of the things that we've learned is that when the COG takes on a project for the region, it works out better than individual cities, some small, and not possibly able to hire an innovation director. Works better if it's on a regional basis. So maybe there's an opportunity with Jackie to bring in somebody, different representatives of different cities who have the same interest, to sit down with this group and come up with the kinds of things they can showcase in cities that will then help market them as well.
I love that idea, Sharon. That's a great one. Jackie always is looking for new jobs to take on, too. And I can see her taking notes right now. No, it's actually a great idea. I mean, we just brought on a regional planner at the COG, and cities pay for that, and they can also use that service. We did the South Bay Fiber Ring. Jackie and her staff put that together. My predecessor, Christian Horvath, the former chair, did a great job there, and the rest of the board of directors. That's an incredible project. So I agree. I think the regional collaboration approach is great. Okay, we have another question right here, please.
Good morning. My name is Arnold Sachs. A couple of things. You started this meeting off with Back to the Future, but there was a question mark there. So why isn't there just a period there? First point. Then you presented a business called Starburst, but there was no A. There's no A. So there's a concept that you look at things and you see something that's really not there. If there's no A in Starburst, then it's not really a legal business.
There's definitely an A in Starburst.
No, it isn't. If you look at the topic, I saw it. I was watching the screen. There's just an inverted V.
I hear a theme of grammatical errors and typos. I'll take responsibility for that.
I understand that. Grammatical errors and typos. I'm concerned about equity over equality. I'm concerned about covered California. I know that the County of Los Angeles had a contract with the Department of Health Services with a private company, and that company kept the money. And they took that money and they built the stadium in Las Vegas. So $600 million went out the door. And that was public funding, and nothing ever happened. So why wasn't that pursued? I'm concerned about a few things. There's a contract, somebody has a contract to underground the utility lines. It's a CCA contract. It is not being upheld. It's 6 years old. I'm concerned about why government hasn't been opened up. You have a meeting going on here. You have 200 people here. How do you practice social distancing? How do you do that?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We're going to move on. Thank you. All right. And so I'm going to go back to, because I don't see any of the questions, I'm going to go back to a question that I wanted to get to earlier, which is there someone that's raising their hand? Is there someone over at that table? Yes? Yeah, come on up, please. Thank you.
Bob Wolf, Hermosa Beach. You're talking about trying to get your employees to work in the office again. And I wondered if you could each answer how your employees get to work, where they're coming from. Are there disincentives for them? Right now, Elizabeth mentioned regional mobility. And do you have any innovative ideas about ways that we could encourage your employees to come to work by coming up with some kinds of mechanisms to get them to your physical offices more efficiently and in a less stressful fashion? Thanks.
You know, I am personally a big fan of alternate forms of transportation. I've been a serious cyclist and always taken public transit. I just bought my first car since 2005 because I broke my leg this summer. You know, I do think that, again, creating regions where people don't have to travel as far is really helpful. If it is possible for you to afford to live near the place where you work, there's a huge added benefit if that space also allows you to congregate with friends and go to the park. You know, those are all really critical pieces. As far as incentivizing people to come in, again, you know, we've talked about that quite a bit here, but I think that whatever we can do to make that an easier ask and to create flexibility is really the key.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, and that'll about do it. I want to thank all the you want one last question? Yeah, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Edwin Lee. I'm a Torrance citizen. I used to work with aerospace company before I retired. I was actually a system engineer at Raytheon before I retired. It's a technology company, so they are very sensitive about protecting technology and information. So we all have to have a security clearance before we can do some really good work, which we do.
We're actually working with a partner who is providing secured space as a service. So basically like a co-working model for security clearance.
Yeah. I just want to inject this into the thoughts of you gentlemen, whether you have security protection. In other words, when you hire people or when you sell your company to a third party, be aware of their origin and the people that are coming from there. So because technology is what makes us different, and we need to protect that. So that's kind of my thoughts.
That's a good point. Thank you. Thank you for the observation. Appreciate it. All right, let's give a warm round of applause for our speakers.